Hi guys, welcome to the third episode of the Garfield County Public Libraries podcast. It's a mouthful, but we say it all the time. Today we're going to be talking about Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice and Ali Hazelwood's Love on the Brain and the differences and the comparisons they both have. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Figured take the theme of romance after Valentine's Day this past month. When we first went into talking about debating these two books, it was kind of the idea of like, oh, this kind of progressive romance novel from back in the early 1800s versus kind of a more progressive romance novel today. As a little bit of background, Jane Austen was someone who wrote novels in the early 1800s, which for the time was pretty unheard of. She also self-published all of her books and kind of took that risk and still made money off of it. It wasn't a huge amount, but considering the circumstance, it was great. Thus why we're calling Jane Austen progressive for the time. Ali Hazelwood is a modern romance author who has a background in neuroscience. So she works in STEM, and all of her characters, or not all of her characters, but most of her work revolves around women in STEM. So therefore progressive there. When we compared these two stories, we were kind of figuring they were going to be quite different, and there are some key differences that we're going to talk about, but really the stories were very similar.
I will be honest, I didn't entirely read the whole of Pride and Prejudice.
It's a lot.
Love on the Brain, which is really good. It's really good.
You know, to be clear, reading Pride and Prejudice, and I esteem myself on being a quick reader, it still took me about a month to get through. It's very wordy, and it's, while still modern English, it feels like you're reading a book from the early 1800s. I still highly recommend reading it, but it's a lot to get through.
Yes. One thing that I had noticed a lot was the fluff. There was a lot of
so much
explanation about how who was staying in this room and why they were gathering and who was doing what in that moment.
And today we're visiting our aunt, and we're going to have a whole conversation with our aunt that relates to nothing else in this story.
Yeah.
And then today we're going to go to this estate and talk to this lady, and we're going to have 7 conversations with this lady, and only one of them is actually important to the plot.
Yeah. Now, when we get to the differences, I will tell you something that I remember that I had put in the back of my brain when I was reading.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well, so we'll get to that. But starting out with what they're similar, there are a couple points where it is not word for word, as we just discussed, the language is very different, but in terms of meaning, the situations are almost one-to-one.
Yeah.
The first being the first impression of the male protag to our female protag, and it being perceived as this like snotty and rude and detached.
Yeah.
I have the actual quotes this week because they are so similar. I wanted people to appreciate this. So from chapter 3 of Pride and Prejudice, is the first time Darcy's being asked about Elizabeth. I believe it's Mr. Wickham, not Mr. Wickham, it's, goodness, why am I blanking on his name? Goodness, Jane's person.
Darcy?
Not Darcy.
No?
No, because Wickham is the bad one. That's going to kick me. Mr. Bingley, goodness.
Bingley.
Yeah, Mr. Bingley. So Mr. Bingley is talking to Mr. Darcy here. And so he says, "But there's one of her sisters sitting down just behind you who is very pretty, and dare I say very agreeable. Do let me ask my partner to introduce you." "Which do you mean?" That being Darcy. And turning around, he looked for a moment at Elizabeth, till catching her eye, he withdrew his own and coldly said, "She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. I am in no humor at present to give consequence to young ladies who are slighted by other men." So that's the Pride and Prejudice version. Then we go to Love on the Brain. This is chapter 1, and this is Bea reminiscing about when she first really interacted with Levi, and her friend Annie is trying to get Levi to say that Bea looks pretty today. Bea says, "I memorized the entire speech, read the PowerPoint 6 times, even agonized over the perfect outfit. I ended up dressing nicer than usual, and Annie, my grad school best friend, had the well-meaning but unfortunate idea to rope Levi into complimenting me. Doesn't Bea look extra pretty today?" It was probably the only topic of conversation she could think of. After all, Annie was always going on about how mysteriously handsome he was, with the dark hair and the broad shoulders and the interesting, unusual face of his. How she'd wish he'd stop being so reserved and ask her out. Except that Levi didn't seem interested in conversation. He studied me intensely with those piercing green eyes of his. He stared at me from head to toe for several moments, and then he said nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And you know what? Levi was
Levi, no, if there's one thing I've taken from Love on the Brain, he's beautiful and also so stupid.
Yes.
Not stupid, literally, because he's a scientist.
Genius, yeah.
He's a genius engineer, but also an idiot.
Yeah. He's really, I think, what I really noticed between him and Darcy is just like the broodness and and it's so typical of like classic novels with like romance novels of where like it's the one guy, he's like, I don't like it, but the big grump. Yeah, the big grump, the whole I am detached from romance, I'm stoic and self-important and women don't tempt me. Yeah. You know. Or how they do it nowadays where they say nonchalant.
Yeah, nonchalant.
where people say, yeah, you got a nonchalant dude, you got it. And it's like, okay, yeah. So don't read me like that, but I do love me a nonchalant.
I love a nonchalant man. No, to be clear, I love both of these books. They're both great. Some of my absolute favorites. But that being said, the male protag in their introduction, very, very similar. Yeah. The other point where the 2 points of text were really close to identical to me was where Elizabeth, Pride and Prejudice, female protag, and B, Love on the Brain's protag, actually confront the male protag about the fact that they're like, why do you not like me? So for Pride and Prejudice, if this tells you how fluffy Pride and Prejudice is, this happens in chapter 34 of, I believe, 68 chapters, or 61 chapters it looks like. Halfway through the book is when this happens. Darcy goes and proposes to Elizabeth, and she reacts not very well.
She's like,
okay.
Yes. Literally
just no, that pretty much. She says, from the very beginning, from the first moment, I may almost say of my acquaintance with you, your manners impressing me with the fullest belief of your arrogance, your conceit, and your selfish disdain of the feelings of others, are such as to form the groundwork of disapprobation on which succeeding events have built so immovable a dislike. And I had not known you a month before I felt that you were the last man in the world whom I could ever be prevailed on to marry. In Love on the Brain, this happens quite a bit sooner. It happens in chapter 6 of, I believe, 24 chapters. I could be wrong there.
It's around that.
It's around that. It's around 20 chapters.
It is like 26 chapters, I think.
Is it 26?
No. I'm going to say 24.
We're going to say safe with 24. We're going to say safe with 24. We could be wrong on that. Fact check us.
We're here to tell stories. We're not here to do like straight up
facts. But that being said, in this context, Bea and Levi are being forced to talk because she's calling him out for a lot of other things. And he's trying to convince her, like, Bea, I don't hate you. And she goes, but of course I know. How could I not know when you've been so relentlessly cold, arrogant, and unapproachable? I stand, anger bubbling up in my throat. For years you have avoided me, refused to collaborate with me without valid reasons, denied me even minimally polite conversation, treated me as though I was repulsive and inferior. You even told my fiancé that he should marry someone else. But of course you don't despise me, Levi. To me, that is the most, like, not one-to-one, but really darn close in terms of the conflict.
No, without a doubt, because she's just like, bro, you hate me. Why would you ever want to be with me? And he's like, I've been in love with you since day one. And she's like, no, you haven't. It's just the interaction. And then this is where the thing comes in. And if anybody's seeing this and you think nonchalantness is what gets you where you want to be in life, it doesn't. It makes you look like you are not interested. You have to show interest in life.
And segueing off of that into the next point of the characterization of Darcy and Levi once again being very similar. Both of them are, on the surface, this cold, stoic, arrogant type. Yes. But when you actually learn a little bit more about them and you dig deeper, they're both very, very extraordinarily good people for their times. Levi, we find out, is running a feminist Twitter account under the name Schmack, and he does a lot of progressive work in that regard. Darcy does a lot of charity towards the poor, and he really does a lot to help people out of crappy circumstances, which is what we learn as we go later on, and both Bea and Elizabeth find themselves embarrassed in their treatment of their male protags after they learn this.
Yeah, I mean, when we find out that Darcy is like supporting her sister who wants to marry a commoner, he's like, yeah, go for it, you go. Well, he's not a commoner, but you know what I mean. And she's just like, well, I didn't know that.
And beyond it just being a commoner, one of the other similar points is there's kind of a Weasley guy in both stories that cause problems. And in Pride and Prejudice, that is Mr. Wickham, which is who her younger sister Lydia ends up marrying. And it causes a scandal because there's like, I think 8 or 9 chapters about this, speaking of fluff. Lydia runs off with Mr. Wickham, they go and elope, which is a scandal. Right. And Mr. Darcy does everything in his power to A, track them down, B, give them the money they need to live a respectable life, and then C, attends their wedding, despite the fact that Mr. Wickham had absolutely stolen from Darcy in past. Yeah. So that's one of the many good deeds of Darcy towards Elizabeth. He also reunites Bingley and Jane, her older sister, together.
No, when he does that, I was like, wow, he loves love, but he's such a brood man that he just doesn't want to show it. I think it's nice. It's just so sweet.
And one of the morals, I think, of Pride and Prejudice is after Elizabeth kind of has her like meltdown on him, he does really try to be nicer to at least her specifically and have more gentle manners. And I see the same thing in Levi in Love on the Brain. After Bea confronts him early on in the book, from then on out, Levi goes out of his way to make sure like her voice is being heard in the room. He has meetings with the staff members when they put her down. He like takes her out to have dinner. One day she gets trapped in a graveyard, going on a run late at night, and he comes and saves her. You know, like he goes out of his way to do nice things and nice things and nice things.
Yeah, and I think I just had thought of this is like, it's in Pride and Prejudice. It's like how she says like they both. Well, I can't remember who was it that came over their pride and who came over their prejudice. Prejudice was Elizabeth.
Here, I have the actual quote. I mean, I would argue that both Darcy and Elizabeth were subject to that. One of her younger sisters, Mary, talks about pride, and I wrote this down. She says, "Pride," observed Mary, who piked herself upon the solidarity of her reflections, "is a very common failing, I believe." This is in chapter 5. "By all that I have ever read, I am convinced that it is very common indeed, that human nature is particularly prone to it, and that there are very few of us who do not cherish the feeling of self-complacency on the score of some quality or other, real or imaginary. Vanity and pride are different things, though the words are often used synonymously. A person may be proud without being vain. Pride relates more to our opinions of ourselves, vanity to what we would have others think of us." And that's, again, near the beginning of the book, kind of setting up their dialogue throughout the rest of the book. And I would argue both Darcy and Elizabeth have to come to their own reflections on both of those things. And they're also their judgments of others, which I would say is the prejudice. Darcy towards Jane and thinking that she's not actually interested in Bingley. Darcy towards Elizabeth's family for being unprofessional, essentially, and rude. And Elizabeth towards Darcy, believing, speaking of the weasels again, Mr. Wickham's account saying that Darcy was greedy and sold him out of like, what he was justly owed, when really Mr. Wickham did it to himself. Which moves on to my next point of the similarities between the stories. The main antagonist in both stories is someone who, at the beginning of the book, we are led to believe is not just a good guy, but like actually a friend of the character. In Pride and Prejudice, as I've said many times, that's Mr. Wickham. In Love on the Brain, that's Guy Kowalski.
God, I hate Guy. Don't even remind me about Guy.
Guy Kowalski is an astronaut who was meant to be the lead on the team of Project Blink, which is the project that Bea and Levi are working on together. And throughout almost the entirety of the book, outside of Guy asking her out once and it being a little weird,
she's like, no.
Guy really does seem supportive of everything they're doing, and so on and so forth, until he sabotages the machine, and near the end of the book, spoiler, tries to kill Bea. And Levi steps in, and the cat that has been imaginary the whole book helps. And
he's amazing. No, I honestly, when I was reading Love on the Brain, and it was such a twist for me, except I kind of knew, like, it's that inkling that you have within a book when you're reading it. It's like, they're weird, but they're doing good things, so I'm gonna like let them scot-free for this moment. And then when they do it, it's like, I knew it, but in the moment, you're also still like, I was kind of rooting for you not to be a bad guy in this story.
Scenario. Yeah, no, absolutely.
But Guy was that person for me, even though he did have moments where you could tell easily that he was very much like a hater towards Levi. And I'm like, why are you hating on him? You gave him that position. You did not want to do it because you wanted to be the face and the Buzz Aldrin for this. And I'm like, get out of here. Get out of here.
And at the end of the day, the reason Levi ended up getting it over Guy was that Levi pulled some strings because the Blink Project was connected to a friend he had in childhood who died. Which once again, Levi being honorable and lovely.
Levi being the man that we all need.
Yes.
Stories.
Versus Mr. Darcy, who was raised with Mr. Wickham, but Mr. Wickham was kind of a greedy, lazy man who just kind of wanted to get off easy. And Darcy had done everything in his power to try and make this man happy, and eventually they left on bad terms because Wickham had wasted everything, and Darcy's like, I'm not going to continue to endorse this bad behavior. And then continues to endorse the bad behavior when he elopes with Lydia. But that being said, both Darcy and Levi are extraordinarily nice to these kind of weasels of men, despite knowing that they don't like them. And then these two men end up kind of getting their what for in the end.
Hey, they hold back their prejudice with the wrong person.
It's true.
It's like, have some prejudice, but just don't be so like prejudiced. I don't know. That's such a bad thing to say, but like, it's like you can have your suspicions on somebody, but like keep it as suspicions and never go on acting on it and being like, no, they suck because of this. It's like, no, if you feel something, just keep it in the back of your mind. Be like, okay, we'll leave it there. Something else happens, we'll add it to the list.
No, hold your judgment until you can actually form the opinion yourself.
Yes.
There are a lot of similarities, but just for the sake of time, I'll only focus on two more. The next one being that both of our main characters, female protagonists, don't want to get married for different reasons. Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice feels like she doesn't have the temperament for it, and that people just get married because that is, the only way to have a prospect. And Elizabeth, because of her father who kind of encouraged her independence, just isn't really interested. Whereas B is not interested in marriage because she was burned by relationships before. Her ex-best friend ended up sleeping with her ex-fiance, and she's like, there's no chance at love again. And because of this, she becomes completely and totally oblivious to the advances of Levi and constantly gaslights herself out of believing he likes her.
She's very much you think I'm pretty? No, you don't. You said it once.
He's just saying that because we're just trying to bond so we can work on the team together. It's like, no.
Like, honey, nobody calls somebody pretty if they, unless they're being weird. But really, rarely is that being somebody weird. It's like, listen to Levi. Just listen. Give him a chance. That wasn't me throughout the entire book.
No, absolutely. And same with Elizabeth particularly after the engagement. After that, she's like, well, he could never possibly fancy me again after he proposed once and I rejected him. He could never, despite him being very obviously still very much in love with her.
Yeah, where he's just like, I need her. I'm thinking about her. I'm going to help her family even though they're weird. And she's like, he still doesn't like me. I'm like, he's helping your family. What are you talking about? Get out of here.
And then another point of one of the plot movers, and we've kind of already talked about this, being that both Elizabeth and Bee had a female relation, whether it was Bee with her best friend Annie or Elizabeth with the younger sister Lydia, where because of the distress that they cause, it kind of is one of the main antagonizing forces in the story that leads them to have these doubts of the other person being interested in them back. Elizabeth being like, Lydia has disgraced this family, Darcy's never going to want to be with someone as disreputable as my family, and Bee being like, well, my ex, whose name is eluding me at the moment because it's so unimportant to the story.
Isn't it like Luke or something like that?
Jacob, something like that.
Some name that we don't care for. He was a cheater, get him out of here.
But she was like, oh, Levi and him collaborate on stuff, so clearly, like, Levi's never going to like me.
Because he's like, I'm going to choose a fiance over her.
Yes. So moving on to some of the differences, kind of bouncing off of that point, Love on the Brain moves a lot faster. You understand as a reader that Levi's affections are returned far, far, far sooner. And Levi starts doing things that prove that far, far, far sooner.
Yeah.
Whereas, as we've mentioned multiple times, Pride and Prejudice is a slow burn of slow burns. Everything is described in excruciating detail, and I love it. But it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah, I was like, I love that you love it. I do not love it. And that's my thing. I'm like, if I had the time, if I were back in the 1800s and I was just a gal waiting to be married and just reading up on my literature, yes, 100%. I would be into the fluff. I would be into it. but I am a modern woman and I need to get things done. And so if it's not something that I can just pop an earbud in and listen to, or just something I could read before bed, I'm not listening to it if it's too much fluff. That's why it was so hard for me to get through Pride and Prejudice, is because it's so much of like, well, I was talking to her and they were gossiping about this one lady, and I'm like, girl, the gossip that you guys are talking about is like day-to-day stuff you would see in anybody's life.
Yes.
And because it's in the 1800s, of course, a lot of things were considered scandalous, and nowadays it's like, you're living in the modern era. So really, but that's why I personally loved Love on the Brain much more, because it's somebody who I can relate to, living day to day, doing their job, and and really not being restricted from, oh, well, I don't have money because I'm not married.
Yes.
Yeah.
The pacing of Pride and Prejudice, the way I would describe it is like, there's one thing of like being an immersive story. You're not just being immersed in Pride and Prejudice, you are a part of the Bennet family. You are part of every single day of drama in that book, from the time she meets Mr. Darcy to the time they get married. So it's definitely extreme in that regard, but you made a good point of, you can relate to be a really important difference between the two stories is the female autonomy of the characters. Elizabeth knows that at some point she's going to have to get married, but she's really trying to push it off until she finds someone she actually enjoys being with, which is asking a lot for the times.
Yes.
And it ends up being really surprising when it ends up being Darcy. Whereas B doesn't have that same pressure. She is trying her best to be a successful scientist, and she has this Blink project, which is kind of her ticket of, if it succeeds, then she's set for life. Yeah. So for her, love is kind of a secondary narrative, despite it being a romance novel.
Yeah, right, yeah. And I think that's why it's so relative to people nowadays. It's like, I have these goals I have to get to. If I fall in love, I fall in love. Really, most people fall in love without realizing it, without looking for it nowadays, and it's just kind of like, you relate to that to be in this scenario, because it's like, yeah, I'm here just doing my job, and then all of a sudden it's like, I fell in love with somebody. Yeah.
And I think to a degree that's one of the things that affects the pacing, is that because Love on the Brain, Elizabeth is allowed to have kind of that reasonable doubt of like, obviously he doesn't have to be courting me because that's not what society tells me to do. It allows us to kind of dip into Levi's intentions sooner and still have that suspense. Whereas in Pride and Prejudice, if we knew for a fact that Darcy loved Elizabeth, then that book would be, quite frankly, a quarter of the length.
Right, yes. I think instead of the whole 60 chapters that it had in there, it would be about like 50, 30, or 40, I mean. 30, 40,
maybe, honestly.
Yeah.
I would say it could maybe even be wrapped up in 25, but again, I do love the pacing,
really?
but it's a lot.
25? Okay. I'm thinking about the fluff, that's why.
You know, if you take out all the stuff with Lydia, if you take out all the stuff with Bingley, if you take out all the stuff with Darcy's aunt, the Duchess, which is, oh my God, she's one of the most intolerable characters in the entire book.
No, yeah, when I read her parts, I was like, I'm going to strangle a fictional character.
If you take out all the stuff with her cousin, like if you take out all of those things and just focus on Elizabeth and Darcy, the book could seriously be a quarter of the length.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Even though I would say Bingley and Lydia do have important narratives in their arc.
Yeah. I think it just really helps this show Darcy as a good person, having them. Yeah.
Something else that is obviously, I think, is going to be an assumed difference between the book, but it's the way that attraction is described. In Pride and Prejudice, physical attraction, while like the eyes are mentioned, you don't really get, and also people being handsome. There's lots of people being handsome. Yeah. But physical attractiveness is far less important in Pride and Prejudice as it is in Love on the Brain. Yeah. Where it's not just like in terms of like describing like, oh, Levi's this hunky guy that's sculpted built like a train, and it has, you know, dark hair and green eyes like pine trees, and, you know, all of these physical attractive things, as well as there is, you know, an element of adult material in this book. Pride and Prejudice, while the language is a little bit complex, could easily be read by a kid. Love on the Brain, exclusively adults.
Well, I think Pride and Prejudice is in the juvenile section.
Yes, I believe it is. Yes. Because it's one of those classics where the story itself is clean enough it can be for kids. It's just the language is a little bit of a barrier.
Just like Little Women, my favorite book.
Yes, Little Women's great.
Y'all want to know what my favorite book is? Little Women. Get me any kind of edition you got. I will take it. Free, no charge.
But yeah, I'd say those are kind of the big differences and versus the similarities of the book. So looking at the reflections of, obviously, Ali Hazelwood is more of a modern author versus Jane Austen. What do you think readers can take from both stories in a modern day context? Big question, I know.
I mean, I think it's like how I mentioned before, that really you can't go in life expecting to find love just like that. It's something that's going to find you all of a sudden when you're least expecting it. I mean, as somebody who has followed that kind of philosophy in life, where I was not expecting anything and then I found the one person who I love with all my heart, it's very much like, I think, a lesson that most people need to learn nowadays. It's just like, do not focus your life on a romantic relationship or even depending on other people, really. It's just kind of like, go through life with your goals and your mindset of going forward. And I think that's really, as much as it wouldn't be too much on Pride and Prejudice, she does have that kind of mindset of just like, I'm going through life as how best I can, even though I know I have to get married.
Yes.
And it's not like she's looking for that like her sisters are, like, I need a man, I need the money, I need to save my family and their title. Like, no, she's like, I'm going to live how I want to, since I am a second born. I'm not the firstborn, so it isn't as dependent on me as it is.
Absolutely. And riffing off of that, one of the main takeaways I would say is that both of them end up, despite at the beginning thinking that they hate the other person, finding common ground on the fact that they have so much in common.
Yeah.
You know, Darcy and Elizabeth both love reading. They both love walking through nature when they need to think. They both are rather reserved with their thoughts, but when they do talk, they're snarky and funny. Whereas Bea and Levi, you know, both of their favorite movies is one of the Star Wars movies. Yeah. And they both are vegan, and they both love science, obviously, and they both have similar hobbies. Like, once again, it's less about I have to find romance to be in a romantic relationship like Annie is in Love on the Brain. And it's more about I have so much in common with this person that I really enjoy their presence.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the hallmarks of more progressive romance, is not romance for the sake of it's this unfallible attraction that no one can fight, but instead it's this, you know, mutual love of a shared concept.
Yeah, and I think, and even then, I think it's also the contrast of the person too. You know, we have somebody who is like, they're both headstrong in Pride and Prejudice. Yes. However, Elizabeth is a lot more like happy and a little bit more expressive and doesn't really care, while Darcy is a bit more brooding, is like, I have to act the part of a man who has money. And
yes, very much so.
Yeah, and then it's the same thing with Bea, where Bea is also very much like a happy-go-lucky person, and like, we're gonna get this job done whether we like it or not, and Levi is also brooding and
far more serious.
Yes, and it's like, and I think it's really kind of finding that counterpart of that complements your personality, even though you should have your own personality. That's another thing I think is very important to these stories, is like how independent these people are in their persons. And I think that is very important in relationships. It's like people having their independent thoughts and their independent personalities, and not depending and not becoming one in a relationship, but if not being 11.
You know, being
if you know what the 11 theory is.
Yes, but being two separate individuals who are together, not one forced person together.
Yes. And I think that's another thing that I really do like with these books. Both of them, they both have that, like, it's a contrast that I can agree with.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I would say that probably wraps up our book talk about the two romance stories. Happy belated Valentine's Day, everyone. And we'll be moving on to our interview section now.
Hi, we're back again with the interview with Abraham Korah, our branch manager here at Glenwood, and he's going to be talking about some of the services and how library is important, and also social workers. Just some brief stuff that I was able to remember. But yes, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure.
Yeah?
I am Abraham Korah, and I am the branch manager at the Glenwood branch of the Garfield County Public Library District.
Yeah, great manager.
Yes.
Not a bias, because we work.
Yeah, we're not biased at all for working.
We're not biased.
He's just a great librarian.
But yeah, so Do you want to tell us about what you want to kind of touch on today and like some of the things that we were talking about before we started this?
Sure, yeah, I want to really touch on how our library, specifically I'll talk about the Glenwood branch, but libraries in the library district and libraries as a whole in the U.S., how they connect with the needs of the community and how that looks beyond books and other materials.
Yeah, all right. So we have a couple questions. And one of the first questions we have is, in what ways do libraries serve as community hubs rather than just information centers?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, I think the real benefit to a community in terms of what we do isn't just the materials that we provide. I mean, that's certainly a foundational aspect, but it's really the other things that we do, really functioning as a third space for many in our community.
Yeah.
And so just that idea of third space where you're either at work or you're at home or school, so it's usually two of those three, and then this is this additional space. So oftentimes people will think about maybe coffee shops and other parks and things like that. But a lot of those places that people go to as a third space, they usually have some kind of monetary exchange that's involved. One of the beauties of what we do and one of the things that I am so thankful for in terms of my work and our work as a library is that there's no monetary exchange in our work. It's really about the community and making sure that we're meeting the needs of the community. Again, whether it is the materials or resources, but it could be events and programs that we have for whether it's early literacy, whether it's teens and our young adult population, additionally adults and some additional populations in terms of veterans that we work with. We work with older patrons as well. So we're really trying to meet the needs of all of our members of our community and being really responsive to what they need.
Yeah, for sure.
You kind of touched on this a little bit, but how do libraries help bridge gaps in education or income?
Well, first and foremost, I think it is that it's probably the last place where you don't actually have to pay anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is really, I think it's amazing. I think it's something that's very unique. It's something that, oftentimes, if you're educated, if you have a reasonable level of income, you may take some of those things for granted. That paying is just part of just how you go about your life. But then you come to the library, you can get great help, helpful staff. You can use a study room. You can attend a program or event. You can book a meeting space for a group that you work with, a nonprofit organization or whatnot, and there is no monetary exchange.
Yeah.
So everybody's welcome, everybody is treated equally, and so it is really both equity and access, I think, is what we really provide.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. I think that's something that we really do see nowadays, is just kind of these low-income families coming into the library, using the space, using the resources we have. I mean, I've already had families come in looking for tutoring opportunities that we have within our websites.
Yes, library resources.
Yeah, library resources, which is, I mean, we've talked about this before, where it's like if it's not being used, it's going to be removed. And I feel like now that schools are kind of prioritizing that within their own little communities, it's really good that they're kind of advocating for these libraries and stuff like that. That it's really, you really realize how important libraries are for these communities.
Specifically, that tutoring resource is called Brain Fuse, if anyone is interested. But quite frankly, libraries just providing access to the internet. A Wi-Fi connection can change a person's entire world.
And then you don't even have to be in the library anymore. You can check out a hotspot. This is just turning into one big advertisement for our website. No, but yeah. And then the next question that we have for you, why are some libraries partnering with social workers?
Yeah, so I think libraries partnering with social workers is really an extension of a lot of partnerships and collaborations that libraries have anyway. So I think that because we are a hub in the community, partnerships are kind of bread and butter. It's kind of a natural part of our work. And really, partnering is also a way in which we can help to ensure success and impact in what we do. So then the way that's extended to social work, it's also potentially called human services as well, is because one of the things that's happened in libraries is that there's a gap that exists between government programs and government services, nonprofits and nonprofit services, and then there's kind of this gap that exists, especially an information gap, and that's what we've been able to fill. So we were already filling that information gap for a variety of different areas. So again, whether it was tutoring, homework help, or early literacy, and getting kids ready for school, whether it was exercise programs and writing workshops and things like that. So we were already doing some of those things. But what we noticed, and libraries across the country have noticed, is that people have come in and asked for other things, such as access to food and reflecting food insecurity, other aspects of just the basic needs, housing, and then in terms of job assistance and things like that as well. So there's just a number of things that have come up, and people don't know where to go to get that. So, where do you turn to? So you can possibly call a phone number for a government agency. Maybe you get a hold of someone, maybe you don't. But if you come to the library, there's a very good chance, especially at the Glenwood branch, that you're going to come up to the desk, you're going to see a friendly face, and if you ask them a question about food, we may be, recommending or suggesting that they connect with, one of our local organizations such as Lift Up. So we're immediately able to get them connected. So we were already connecting people with a variety of things. So as an extension of that, we started connecting people with information related to meeting their basic needs, and so that social services, human services component. And so then what we realized, though, is we have a lot of knowledge in a lot of areas, but we also are well aware that we're not experts in everything. So how can we be most impactful? And that's still through connections. But one of the things that we realize is that in order to connect on human and social services, it's an area where we can learn and train, but we are not the experts. So what a lot of libraries have been doing, so the main Denver Public Library is an example. If you go into the Denver Public, they actually have social workers on staff that have gotten to know, say for example, some of the unhoused folks that use that library, other folks that need help, and they know that they can go into the library and then they can get a sandwich and coffee. They get to see a friendly face that's not asking them to leave. And additionally, if they need a service, they have a question, they have, say, a medical need or whatnot, they're able to get some of those needs met through information and connections. So we have not had that in Garfield County Public Library District. So the first time that we've actually done that is we had a social work intern, human services is the major, through Colorado Mountain College. And so they were housed at our branch, and they helped us do some things in terms of identifying some resources so that we had those at the ready when someone from the community came in and asked us a question, that we could confidently answer that with knowledgeable and credible information. Additionally, one of the things that we also did is we did a survey of our staff in terms of their understanding and essentially how they feel about social service needs, the library's impact and ability to serve that need, as well as what we could do better to also address that need for the community. Because ultimately, the reality is, whether we're trained or capable, we are going to get the questions. So it behooves us as a team, as a responsive team to the community, to be able to actually develop that knowledge, do some training, connect with the experts. And again, most of our work is still going to be the connection piece, which again, that is, that's what we do on a daily basis. So we may not be connecting someone to an author, we may be connecting them to a way to get permanent housing. But again, information connection.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and skip this question because you've already answered it quite well. And moving on to the next question. Pardon me, I have a frog in my throat. What kinds of everyday situations arise in libraries that require more than traditional library training?
Well, certainly, one of the reasons that we had the intern work with us is because we did know that that was a particular gap in terms of knowing how to effectively connect our community with human services. So we knew that wasn't our expertise. So we wanted to kind of get a sense of where we are right now, what the attitudes are of our staff, and then what we can do to do better serve those needs and what our capacity is. We're never going to be an organization that's going to actually probably completely fulfill their need immediately. But what we can do is effectively make sure that we're getting that person connected to a resource that's useful for them. And then so that's certainly I think what we do. And then in terms of library training, what we've continued to do is, as we've gone outside of the more traditional provider of resources and materials, we have had to increase our capability through training, through really conscientious broadening of our professional development as staff. So whether it's Spanish services, whether it's services for older patrons, things like that. What we've done basically is we have identified those areas where there is a need, and we've figured out for that need that exists, what's our ability to support that need? So so it may be something like we are going to actually do a program, and we're going to facilitate something, or we're going to maybe bring in a speaker, or it could be that we are going to connect with a community organization that are the experts in this area, and we're going to provide the space and maybe some snacks, and maybe some promotion. And so any of those steps or all of those steps, depending on what we're trying to accomplish, can be very effective in meeting those needs. So we don't necessarily have to have knowledge in every area to be effective and to be responsive to the community, but what we need to do is identify where we can support. So one of the things that we've been doing is we've been doing these community interviews to again assess what the needs are of the community, and from there, to try to determine if there are some ways in which we can help to meet those needs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, without a doubt. Those community interviews really have come in handy in really understanding. You would think you would understand as a librarian a lot of the issues that you come into, but it gives you perspective on what other businesses that are in nonprofit or government work are seeing that we aren't really seeing as day to day, sitting at a desk and communicating with these people. It's really eye-opening to be in those interviews for sure.
And I would argue even just a little bit fun. You get to kind of get a pulse on the community, because as much as the library itself is a community center, obviously not everyone's coming into the library for various reasons, whether they're working or they are, maybe disabled or, XYZ reasons why they might not be able to come into the space. It's really great that we're able to reach out to these individuals and still get an idea of what the community needs and provide as much as we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, a lot of our work goes beyond the walls of the building.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. And then the next question that we have would be, how does providing social support services change the atmosphere or mission of a library?
Well, interestingly, I was thinking about this question. I don't know that our atmosphere or mission change. It definitely does not change radically. It may change in some very minimal sense, but I think the reality of the way that we do our work is that first and foremost, we're focused on customer service, professionalism, and respect and empathy. Our staff, I work with a great team who provides that on a daily basis to everyone that comes in. So it really doesn't matter what the need is that the person presents with. It's really about how they're treated. And so the expectation that all of our staff continue to carry and live up to on a daily basis is that we treat everyone with care and kindness, regardless of their circumstances.
Yeah.
And we don't presuppose or prejudge anyone. Certainly, from time to time, issues do arise at the library. Part of the reason we do end up seeing maybe more issues than many of our other branches in terms of disruptions is because of just where we're located geographically. So we do tend to serve as a hub where there are people that are coming and going in and out through our community, and many of them are needing a space. They need a day to spend somewhere, and the library supports that function, and we welcome all. And so as long as they are managing themselves and taking care of their needs, they're asking us for help, and we're providing the help and support that we can provide. They're welcome to stay and enjoy the experience that they have here, whether it's computer or other resources, asking for help or guidance in terms of navigating things. So therefore those things don't change. So the only time the atmosphere might change is if there's a disruption, and if there's a disruption, we manage that again in the most empathetic and responsive way possible, because of course we want to maintain safety for everyone that uses our building and our resources, and we also want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable as well. So we are thoughtful in terms of managing those disruptions as quickly as possible, but it is relatively speaking, it's a very, very minor issue, and the vast majority of people, regardless of their circumstances or challenges in their particular lives at that time, we would never know, because very rarely does an issue arise.
Okay, so the next question that we have for you is, how can libraries foster connection between different groups of people?
Yeah, the library, because we are open to everyone in the community, what happens is people from different walks of life, different socioeconomic groups, ethnicities and whatnot, basically you name it, age. So people from various demographics, they all come to the building or access our resources, access our services for various reasons. So you just get a lot of different people coming in for various things. And probably one of the areas where different people really connect in a meaningful way are through activities, whether it's a book club, mahjong, parents that are meeting through story times and wiggles and various activities. I think that is really where a lot of the connections are fostered. As an example, Cherry, one of our colleagues here, has started a mahjong club basically, and they come together once every 2 weeks to play. From there, though, what's happened is they've actually developed connections, and they are connecting outside of the walls. And when someone's sick, they're supporting that person, and all of these connections were fostered because they came together for an activity.
Absolutely. Came in as a community. That's so sweet.
Moving on to our next question, what does a day in the life of Abraham Korah look like as a branch manager? What does a branch manager do?
Well, a branch manager, that's a good question. I'm still relatively new to that role. I've been here a little over 2.5 years. What I would say first and foremost is my job in terms of the community is to be responsive. And that takes two forms. One is to be responsive to the needs of my staff. And what that looks like basically is I want to always ensure that I set up my staff for success and that I provide the support that they need, whether it's to make sure that their well-being is taken care of or that they have the training or tools to be able to do their jobs. And ideally what I'm hoping that will happen for all of our staff here, our team, is that each and every person is able to continue to grow and find meaningful and more opportunities within the organization, and we're able to retain our staff. We've been very grateful, and I'm so thankful that we have had essentially no real turnover in the time that I've been here, which I think speaks to a team that, we're not perfect, but we're a really high functioning team, and we've just continued to grow together.
Yeah.
Helps when you have a great brand
Yeah.
manager.
Well, and then the other thing, so of course staff, and then what that leads to then is our ability to serve the community. So again, it starts with empathetic and kind and professional customer service when a patron walks in, and we're making sure that we are friendly and welcoming, and making sure that we're answering their questions, helping them get their needs met. Additionally, I think we also provide essentially a space, and space is really important. We do live in a digital age where we do spend a lot of time in virtual spaces on our phones and computers and whatnot, but physical space is still important. It serves as a meeting space for a lot of different people. It's a place for people to come together for events and so forth. But additionally, what we also do in terms of kind of meeting the needs of our patrons is helping them feel a sense of belonging in the building as well, so that the branch does reflect who they are. They're able to see themselves in the branch, and if we can do that, I think we're going to really meet the needs of the community.
Absolutely.
For sure. And then the second question that we have is, how have libraries evolved in the digital age?
Yeah, in the digital age, as I was just saying, what's interesting is I would say what the digital age has done really is it's an additive. So it's not an either or. So just because we do have a lot of e-resources, a lot of things that people can access, that we provide to our communities, that people can access online, remotely. They don't have to come to the building. They don't have to talk to us. So they can certainly do that. However, what we are finding for the most part is that's an additive to all the other things that we're doing. So some people are only reading physical books, some people are only reading ebooks, but there's a lot of people that are going back and forth because I need a break from a screen, so I want to read a physical book. It's a lot easier for me to pack my tablet, and I can take that on vacation. I can read digitally. So we, I think, are using digital as a complement to enhance the needs of our patrons. So we're essentially available to them both in physical form as well as in virtual form, 24 hours a day.
Yeah, 24/7, really, in reality.
Going back to advertising our website again, go under the e-library tab. We have a whole bunch of resources both for reading and various other things.
Libby and Hoopla.
Libby and Hoopla.
And Canopy.
And Canopy, and a whole bunch more.
And then,
Because of, this is kind of a bonus question, just knowing your background a bit, Abraham, you worked a lot in academic libraries. What would you say is a key difference between an academic library and a public library?
I think the key difference really is that a public library is really, it serves a really more essential function in a community, and it's also responsive to a community. So for me, when I had this opportunity to come to the Glenwood branch, the real reason I did it was because I didn't feel very connected to Glenwood Springs. In my previous position, I had a great position in an academic library. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't feel really like I had the pulse of the community. And being here, I've had an opportunity to make some really amazing connections with a lot of different individuals, leaders in the town, whether it's in the city, the nonprofits, the downtown the downtown development district as well. So we've just made we've been able to make a lot of connections. Our branch has been able to, all of our staff essentially, have been making really robust connections with a lot of different community members. And when you do that, you actually get a sense of the community. And what's really amazing, and what we're really fortunate to be able to do, is that we're able to immediately see the impact that we have on our communities as well, and that's really the amazing part of it. And I think for our team in a public library, what's the most direct connection is that by coming to work, we're doing good. We're impacting our community for good. And it's a little harder to say that in an academic library, although you do that. Just that direct connection is really amazing.
yeah, without a doubt. And then our last question is a fun question that we ask all our guests is, if your life was a book, what genre would it be?
Or what kind of book would it be?
Oh my gosh.
Or do you
If
have
my
a
life,
specific title?
I hope it would be some kind of pithy, somewhat short, maybe comedic tale, just light and fun. So I would prefer that. I think we have enough in most of our lives, whether it's in terms of just what's happening in society as a whole, and some of the needs that we're trying to meet, where there's a lot of serious things that we focus on. But I would say something light and fun, and maybe somewhat short. Because time is always of the essence.
Dave Sedaris is coming.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, something lighthearted. I think is really important, and I think we all need that in our lives.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Abraham. We appreciate you coming in and answering our questions. Is there anything else you would like to touch on before we close for the afternoon?
No, I appreciate the time, and I'm happy that I was able to share a little bit about the library with you all, or talk a little bit about the library with you all. That's beyond some of the things that most people think of as libraries, as just a place to store books.
Yeah, but only books.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.